Again, we're going to be recording this for those that may have missed it. We'll be putting it on our website and on our social media accounts. So if you know somebody who should see this, or you want to replay something that you heard, that's just a nice, easy way to do it. So with that, I'll turn things over to the Honorable Jeanette Werdish, Chair of our HRA EDA Board.
Thank you, Jordan. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Like Jordan said, I'm Jeanette Werdish, Chair of the Renville County HRA EDA. I'd like to thank you all for joining us this afternoon for our Renville County Housing Study Kickoff meeting. The availability of affordable quality housing for our residents in all stages of their lives is vital to the success of Renville County. In an effort to assess our county's housing needs and provide a tool to help spur new development, earlier this year we engaged Maxfield Research, which is the gold standard in housing studies, to assist us with our project. Matt Mullins, the consultant with Maxfield Research in charge of our project, will be presenting a synopsis of the results of the study in just a few minutes. We'll also hear from our Renville County economic developer Jordan Zeller on a new Renville County multifamily housing development gap loan program that our board recently approved, as well as other resources available to assist with housing development. The housing study, as well as the new Renville County Housing Development Assistance Directory and information on our multifamily housing development gap loan program, has been posted to our website. So you can go to www.renville.com to download and review that at your convenience. We would like to extend a sincere appreciation to the Southwest Initiative Foundation for their generous grant to assist us with this project, as well as to our cities for their contribution to help make the study possible. So with that, I'll turn things over to Matt Mullins with Maxfield Research.
All right, well, thank you, Janet. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of their day today to jump into some of this housing discussion regarding the housing markets across the county. So as Jordan mentioned, we kind of kicked this off at a crazy time. So when we started this process, it was late February before COVID hit, and things are still normal, and here we are. So I'd rather be in person presenting this to you live, face to face, but here we are in these COVID times. So we'll run with technology and make it work the best that we can. So we'll try to reserve questions towards the end, and I believe there is a comment function too in the software. So if you have some comments, you can kind of type them in too as you go. Then hopefully they'll pop up and I can kind of see some of those comments as they pop up. So we'll jump into it. So as Jordan mentioned, we started this process a while back, back pre-COVID in February, and things have changed quite a bit over the past 6 months. And we're gonna jump into it. So I'm trying to share my screen right now. Do you see just the first slide, or do you see any other?
Just the first slide with the big red box.
Okay. I'm trying to get this to progress here to the next slide. Let's see here. For some reason, it's not letting me move forward here. Let's see. I guess I could pass it back over to you, Jordan, if do you have a copy of the PowerPoint, or I can make someone else.
Stephanie, can you load up Matt's PowerPoint quick, please?
Or else I could do a share possibly to.
Yep, I can load it up. Give me 1 second.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, you never know technology. Darn it. Yeah, it's not letting me progress through my slides right now. But I'll keep talking as we're going. So. Perfect, there we are. We can go to the next slide there. Stephanie, you can take control. I'll just say next then, and we can.
Yep, I'll advance as you say that. Thanks.
Perfect. Okay, go ahead to the next slide there, Stephanie. So the next slide here just kind of talks about some of the background where things are at. So the data we collected this study was, again, during the COVID time. So certainly a challenging time to try to get information on projects as people are stay-at-home mandates, and no one's in the office and whatnot. But we managed to get her done. So we issued we collected data through the spring months and issued an early summer issued draft report back in July. Has a review and comment period from the various cities, municipalities, and the county, and then here we are today to kind of talk about some of the findings. So we're going to jump into where we're at. So go ahead, next slide here. So this just here kind of shows the agenda, what we're going to touch on today as far as these kind of key topics. We'll try to dive into as much as we can about the COVID-19 impacts. We'll see how much time we have. There's a lot going on today, so we'll see where we're at with that. But I'll just do my best to try to hit on some of the kind of the big picture macro level trends we're seeing related to housing development, housing needs that as they change throughout this period. Go ahead, Stephanie. So the first slide, one more would be the summary of the sub-market map. Let's go to the next slide here. Bingo. Okay, so when we started this process back in February, we met with the county and the city to kind of discuss, how are we going to break up Renville County? Big county geographically. I mean, very large geographic area. And the interesting thing is it just, everything kind of follows the highway corridor east and west. You have, 10 municipalities here in the city, but 7 of those municipalities are located on the highway. So, very, very large geographic area. So we decided to break up the county into 4 distinct quadrants. So moving, left to right with the Renville County in the far west. Then we have the Olivia, which does include Bird Island as well. And then moving farther to the east, we have the Buffalo Lake Hector, and then farther to the south, we kind of clumped together, just called the South submarket, because kind of school districts kind of go a variety of different ways in that geographic area. So we present the data. We're presenting a lot of the data both at the submarket level, which is these 4 specific submarkets, and then at a higher level, which would be just the county proper as well. So we're going to jump into demographics, economics first. So let's go to the next slide here. Go one more. So I think the elephant in the room is, we've had declining population for a long time, back to the 40s and 50s, and things kind of peaked, and we've had, a continued decline. A lot of those agriculture related household formations today are a lot different than they were back through the ages, where you have much larger household sizes and farmsteads. And, look at the past decade, population declined about another 10% last decade. However, we are seeing things kind of stabilize a bit as far as the declines are not as substantial as they were in previous decades, and then they have kind of leveled out going forward. So we'll go to the next slide here, and we'll kind of show it by the submarket where things are at. So we had a lot of those population declines did happen in the 90s and 2000, early part of 2000s in the Great Recession, 2000 after 2005-ish. But you see the Olivia submarket took a hit there, that 90s and the early 2000s, as well as, most of the submarkets took some declines, but they have leveled out here currently, and going forward, we're projecting a lower decline velocity in the forefront. However, next slide, please. You'll see that despite these declines in population as a whole, due to demographic characteristics, we do have growth in the market, and that growth is really in that baby boomer population and the senior population, as you'll see in those graphs at the top. A 65 plus population is showing real substantial growth due to the aging of the population. So that indicates, how they can be downsizing, alternative product types, and it could be a lot of opportunity for housing for this demographic, and how do we serve them long term. And we do have some growth too in the the older millennials and the younger Gen Xers at 35 to 44 age cohort. Those tend to be home buyers, either first time or second time home buyers. In that regards, there is a little bit of growth there, but the the vast big takeaway is that growth is really in that empty nester senior population that's really taken off. Next slide, please. So this is an interesting chart I threw together recently about just generationally. How do we compare to the state of Minnesota and the Twin Cities from a generational standpoint? So the baby boomers were born 1946 to 64, and you'll see they're in the red, the second one from the bottom. In most areas across the county, we're 25% plus. 25 to 28% plus of the population is a boomer population compared to the metro, which is hovering at 22, and the state of Minnesota at 23. So you certainly see that there is it's a large demographic for us in the county. Then moving up, as you go up that chart to the millennials, the second color down, you'll see we're hovering at 18%. Millennials are basically born 1980s and 1990s, younger generation, hover 18%, but yet compared to the metro, the state, about 23%. So again, we're losing the younger demographic, when they leave for high school and not necessarily coming back. And the million-dollar question is how do we get them to move back as they settle in for their careers? Next slide here. But as we look at the state of Minnesota, you'll see, it's not a isolated incident to Renville County. Majority of the state, whether it's southern Minnesota, southwest, western Minnesota, northern Minnesota, has an aging population. As we look at the darker the color in that graph, you'll see the higher propensity for seniors. So certainly, as a whole, the state is seeing a lot of growth in that age cohort, baby boomers especially, and it's the metro area that's younger. But the big flip-flop we're going to have in the next, say, 20 years is going to be, say, today, as of 2020, a lot of seniors are in outstate Minnesota today, whereas 20 years from now, you're going to see that flip-flop, whereas there's going to be more of that population in that the 7-county metro core. So that's certainly going to change over the next couple decades here. Go ahead, next slide. So looking at Renville County specifically, we have a lot of empty nesters or never nesters, meaning married couples that with no kids or the kids left the nest. Over 35-36% of the population falls in that category, as long as living alone is pretty high as well. So single persons, it's like 28% of the household stock is 28. There's about 28-ish. So combined, you have 50% plus, 55% plus of the population falls into those two categories, which leads to potentially smaller housing product types that may not be necessarily a single family home. Go ahead, next slide. So as we look at the incomes, it's kind of interesting. I thought it was really interesting to see how high the incomes were for the millennials. So as we move further to the left at 25 to 34, the younger generation had pretty strong incomes, $62,000. Then they kind of peak at that 45 to 54 cohort across the county, but you'll see a pretty steep decline as people retire and get an age. So you see that drop to that 54,000 range, 65 at retirement age, but 75 plus, you see that it dropped really substantially at 33. So typically, it's not quite as big of a drop as that. So our seniors are probably relying on maybe more Social Security and other sources of income. So it's a little bit lower than the state average, which has a little bit higher incomes for that 75 plus demographic. But our incomes are pretty steady between that, the Gen Xers, and even some of the older millennials is where the highest incomes are today. So higher than, say, baby boomers. So I found that kind of an interesting fact as we looked at these numbers, looking at household income. Go ahead, next slide, please. And as we look at across the county, they vary from submarket to submarket, but the Buffalo Lake Hector area definitely had the highest income, about over 62,000, compared to the south submarket. It was like 52-ish, give or take. So they did, you know, have about 10,000 household income swing between those two submarkets. But a lot of that's related to the next slide, which is show you, go to the next slide here, please. Well, it's kind of tough to read there, but that shows the home ownership rate. So again, the propensity to own a home versus rent. And we'll talk about the lack of rental housing in a second, but your very high home ownership rates across the county, as well as that Buffalo Lake Hector submarket has really high home ownership rates. Hence, typically more homeowners usually means a higher household income. And that kind of relates back to that last slide that we showed you. The higher household incomes are in that submarket as well. Whereas when you have more renters, typically that brings down your overall median income. Okay, go ahead, next slide. So now I'm going to tell you a couple slides about the job market and employment sector. What's interesting is, you know, the manufacturing sector. We'll touch on that. So the state of Minnesota is putting sugar beet farmers and operations in that manufacturing sector. So hence, you've got some, you know, it's kind of misleading, so to speak, but they are putting that sugar beet production into the manufacturing sector. So that kind of artificially inflates what you think of the traditional manufacturing job. But as we look at we'll start with talking about, you know, the import exports as far as where workers are coming and going. People are certainly leaving the county for employment. Well, that's going to, you know, Wilmer is probably the #1 spot, or, you know, Hutchinson, McLeod County, Nicollet County, New Ulmish. There is export of workers, about 57%, give or take, leave the county for employment, typically to higher paying jobs, just due to higher wages outside the county. We'll talk about the next slide here. It shows wages by sector. It just compares against the Southwest region. You see they're pretty comparable across the region, for the county to the region, but again, the manufacturing sector has the highest wages in the county. And the tough part about these numbers is they don't really take into account ag. So a lot of the farming industry gets left out because the state of Minnesota doesn't cover employment trends in the ag industry, as you have a lot of self-employed individuals and family farms, so they don't necessarily count those numbers. So it's always tough to get a real grasp on what the actual numbers are in the agricultural sector, as they don't really track the numbers as well as it's a typical, you know, occupation job. So the ag numbers really are not really reflected into this wage table. Go ahead, next slide. And again, I talked about this earlier, wages in manufacturing being highest, but you'll see that the blue chart shows the higher the blue chart, the higher the wage. You know, manufacturing, financial services have the highest wages, where the most job tends to fall into the education, healthcare industry, according to what the state is pulling for you know, total jobs as a whole across the county. Next slide, please. So this was a really interesting stat. So obviously COVID hit in March, and you know, historically Renville has had been following the trends of the state and the Twin Cities. However, always had a little bit higher unemployment rate. However, we've certainly seen during COVID times that has not been hit as hard as the metro and the Twin Cities. So I was really fascinated to see how that shook out. So according to the latest numbers from the state of Minnesota, you know, hovering at that, you know, 5.5% unemployment rates. Now how relevant that is, you know, if there's not other jobs being counted that are being missed right now, it's hard to know, but that's a very positive sign to see that unemployment rate, it's supposed to report an unemployment rate, is so low today, despite what's been going on with the shutdowns. Go ahead, next slide. So now we're going to dive into some of the big trends with regards to three sectors: the for sale market, the rental market, and the senior market. So kicking things off, historically, not a whole lot of new construction. 10, 12, 15 units per year. I think that's just been reported by a building permit. So not a whole lot of new production for new housing. Next slide. So now we're going to talk about rental housing first, and segue that in the senior and the for sale market. So I think the big picture is just a lack of rental housing across the county. That's a lack of rental housing and a lack of quality rental housing. Very, very older housing stock. The last market rate building was built like 40 years ago. So what's happened is we really call it naturally occurring affordable housing because it's not necessarily a government mandated affordable housing program, but because of the age of the structure, the maintenance and whatnot, the rents have not gone up and the rents have stayed rather affordable. So really all the rental stock in the county would fall as affordable housing per the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency rules, just due in part to the old age of the stock. So when we look at the housing stock, we're looking at true multifamily structures, such as the photo up there. You can see kind of a traditional multifamily, not a single family rental. Well, we did find very low vacancy rates, sub 3-4% for the most product type across the county. So that indicates pent-up demand for new housing, whether that's market rate housing, affordable, subsidized, just a lack of quality housing. And the key takeaway, from the second kind of market rate bullet point would be the rents. So the average rent we profiled, the market rate product was $540 a month, with a price per square, which is rent divided by square footage, of 61 cents. Now, keep that number in mind. We're going to talk about that. It's subsequent slides. It's about housing and development costs, because it's really tough to cash flow anything with those kind of rents. So overall, just older products stock and a lack of quality rentals. Next slide. What's fascinating is there is a lot of rental housing that is your non-traditional product type. So it's, whether it's a single family home or, a farmstead or whatnot, a lot of people are renting, but they're renting in a single family rental. So over half of the rentals in the county fall into that category, versus the state of Minnesota, 27%. So huge split there between the state and Renville County as far as the type of product types that are out there. So what's happened is, because the private sector is not developing any true multifamily stock, individual investors have really taken it upon themselves to provide single family homes as traditional product type that is out there for renters to pursue. We're looking for a rental unit. So very, very high number. That's definitely probably one of the highest numbers I've ever seen as far as a lot of the cities and counties we work on. So we'll go to the next slide here. So this just kind of shows you where the rents are at and the vacancy rates. So the blue column is total units. So Olivia submarket has the most units. But you see the vacancy rates were low across pretty much all submarkets. So when we look at vacancy rates, we think 5%. 5% is considered the kind of flatline equilibrium, and anything lower than 5% would be pent-up demand for more housing. So you see across the board, there's pent-up demand because vacancy rates are so low, excuse me. If you're looking for a new product type, there's nothing out there. I think there's a few options. That's a big hindrance, especially for employers as you're looking to add. You know, you got jobs and when I move to town, there's nowhere to put them. So that's a big issue. Just having available rental stock for those households if they choose to move to town for new jobs. Go ahead, next slide. So this just shows the rent then by a little different scenario. But this shows the rents by contract rent. Contract rent simply the asking rent, so to speak. And in most submarkets, it's in that, you know, ranges of 540, 550, but the south submarket a little bit lower than 500. So, so rather affordable contract rents across the board. They don't vary too much from area to area. Go ahead. So let's touch on some senior housing trends and older adult, just trends in general about aging in place. So this slide here just kind of shows the full spectrum of housing options as people age. So the far left, traditional single family home, moving across the spectrum, maybe downsize an apartment, a townhome, and then moving across to the right gets more to the service-based housing, whether that's independent living, assisted living, memory care, or nursing facility, et cetera. So that's kind of the big picture for senior housing. We're talking about senior housing. Senior housing could mean a lot of things because it could be, you know, a villa, slab on grade construction, patio home, cottage that targets a 55 plus, 65 plus, or it can go all the way across to like a nursing home. So it's a pretty broad term. It can mean a lot of things. So go ahead, next slide here. So this just shows where the units are in the county. You know, how the distribution is by product type. I know because color coded there, but you see that the Buffalo Lake Hector actually has the highest number of senior housing units, higher than Olivia, which kind of surprised us, given Olivia being a little bit, you know, larger submarket, but nothing in the south. And the challenging part of senior housing too is we have a lot of senior housing just outside the county. We go to McLeod County to Hutchinson, go up to Wilmer, Redwood Falls, Marshall, New Ulm. You know, you get a little bit out, but there's a lot of senior housing out there. And there are options that, you know, have more healthcare options too for their in those communities. Next slide, please. You have it here? Okay, there we go. Sorry, I got a little pop-up saying poor network connections. Hopefully I didn't lose you there. There's a couple comments from baby boomers. You know, everyone talks about baby boomers and you know, the impact they have on the whole economy and the impact they have on the society in general. Just some quick comments. I think the fascinating ones to me are, you know, 2/3 of boomers plan to work past their retirement age. High homeownership rate, you know, certainly have a lot of the nation's wealth as far as disposable income, consumer spending, et cetera. It's a huge demographic force today in the overall housing environment. Next slide. I thought this is kind of interesting slide. It's kind of hard to see, but if you look at that the top of the chart, you see how it kind of faded like that red to green. That just kind of shows the how much real estate the baby boomers own in America. You see They own the vast majority of real estate in the US. And what's happened is because of a lack of housing supply and be able to offer new options or a product types, whether it be apartments or senior housing or one-level living, they've retained their single-family homes and are desired to age in place. So there's less turnover today than there previously has been in generations because of these people aging in place more. So that whole issue has contributed to the lack of supply in the marketplace, and fewer homes to buy for, say, millennials as well. Go ahead, next slide. Should have one more slide, I think, on there we go, aging in place. So, but when you look at preference surveys, people want to stay in the same community. I mean, they don't want to leave their community. They want to stay in their community. And ideally, they want, if they can, stay in their existing home. So, but they retrofit that home through various improvements or whatnot. But the reality is people want to stay in the home at all possible. And the desire to stay in the community. So if the right housing product type is available in the marketplace, they certainly will, take advantage of that and stay in the communities. Next slide. All right, so looking at just kind of some of the housing costs as a county compared to the region, the far left blue shows Renville County versus, say, the Southwest Minnesota area and state. You'll see there's certainly a big price difference, even between Southwest region and Renville County. Certainly more affordable housing product types just based on, resale value from the local Realtors Association. So we're going to talk about that too, and just how to sell some of the affordability as a big positive for the county. Go ahead, next slide. This just shows it by submarket. You see kind of what happened last decade. It's certainly at 2000. Most submarkets, you had a big run up to 05. The recession hit, things dropped. 2010 was kind of the trough. And then, of course, we have a big run up this decade. So the past, 5 years, especially, has been a big appreciation of real estate. All those submarkets across the county have benefited from, pretty positive appreciation and home equity across the board. Next slide. But as we look where that product type is, it's certainly single family dominated. We don't have a whole lot of multifamily product stock out there, whether that's, twin homes, townhomes, cottages, etc. Dominated by that single family product type. And the key takeaway is a 3.1 month supply of homes for sale today. Ideally, we want 4 to 6 for a balanced market. So there's not a whole lot of homes out there today for buyers looking to purchase, and that supply is older. The average age of a home, or median age, 1940. So not a whole lot of new product type out there that doesn't need, remodeling or updates, etc. Go ahead, next slide, Stephanie. Again, it's shown by submarket. Olivia dominating as far as pricing. This is my list price, not sold price right here, but you'll see, the price in Olivia is double that of, say, a Buffalo Hector area right now based on pricing, but there's not a whole lot of supply in, say, a Buffalo Hector either, or the South. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. But that's certainly the highest price points in the Olivia area. Let's go ahead, next slide. And new construction. I mean, not a whole lot out there. I mean, there's not a whole lot of active subdivisions. We call active subdivision meaning, say, a quote unquote newer subdivision that has been platted, say, in the past, 10, 15 years, give or take. Not like a random lot in a infill lot. We're talking, newer subdivisions on the edge of town. But not a whole lot out there for options for vacant lots. I mean, if you are looking to build, you kind of have some limited options right now. And there are certainly lots out there. There are vacant lots, but for a specific product type, you may not find it as far as if you want a certain topography or a walkout or whatnot. But I think the moral of the story is there's not a whole lot of vacant lots, and there's no spec development going on, and the new construction tends to target up here, and we'll touch on that. Build to suit premium, but there's nothing out there. It's going to be an end consumer who makes that lot purchase with a builder. There's not any spec going on from the development community. Good, Stephanie. We talked about about aging in place, etc. But today there's a huge demand for anything with one level letting. Granted, those photos don't represent everything that could happen in, say, Renville County. They're pretty dense, but I think at Rambler, anything one level living, can be as low as 1,200 square feet on the main. Ideally 1,500 square feet on the main. Strong demand. We see strong demand for villas, cottages, twin homes, anything that just makes lacks stairs and lacks entryway, come from the garage in, get rid of that step. It's a strong demand, and this really is a sweet spot today in the marketplace for the new construction industry is appealing to this demographic. Go ahead, next slide. I'll just touch on a few features that people are looking for today, but the biggest one is master bedroom on the main, just maintenance free, just anything that just makes your life a little easier and downsizes. We won't go into all of those, but it's a product type that there's certainly a lot of demand for today. Go ahead. So the question we get time and time again is how come no one could build an entry-level house today? And we could go out, we could talk about this for like 2 hours, but there's so many issues out there why entry-level homes are not being built today. But the biggest thing just being the construction costs, labor costs, material costs, land costs, it all adds up. And in rural America especially, we have an issue with appraisals. And are there enough comps out there to make it appraise out? If it doesn't appraise out, you need more equity to the table. So a lot of issues at hand that are affecting why we're missing entry level. And I also said the middle market as well. The middle market is missing too, because it's really tough to build anything that's affordable given today's costs. And this past few weeks we've had substantial, or that few months, labor cost. I mean the lumber costs, 2x4s, anything like that, it's gone up threefold in the past few months. So the cost to build a house or any kind of building has gone up substantially just due to the supply and demand and the lumber issues. Go next slide. So, and related to that it's labor. So one thing we definitely heard through the course of studies is a lack of labor in the county, whether it's subcontractors, you name it, framer, whatever it would be. There's just a lack of contractors, or the contractors in the county are leaving the county and they're chasing jobs in the metro area or whatnot. So that lack of labor sort of does affect housing as well, because we don't have the it's going to drive up the cost because they're all chasing other projects. So there's just no economies of scale ever being formed, so to speak, in the county. So that certainly has been a sticking point in the county. There's just a lack of available labor to get things built. Go ahead, next slide. And this just kind of shows the overall development costs. It's kind of hard to see that, but over the past couple of decades, construction costs have gone up so much and everything that it's the median sales price of a home across the Midwest is even $300,000 today. So there's a lot of factors again driving that, but it's just very, very challenging today to make that happen, given all the regulation and whatnot. Go ahead, next slide. This next slide should talk about rental housing. So a while back, we talked about the rents in Renville County being like $540 a month and like 61 cents per square foot. Well, to break even today, given development costs and land costs and whatnot, those rents have to be pretty much double. They have double the cost just to make the project break even. This financial analysis I put together shows it in red. And that's even at $900 a month in rent. That's still in the red. So you see we have a huge gap. And to fill that gap, we have to get some big creative, use public-private partnerships, and find some other financing mechanisms to incentivize construction. So we'll talk about that later. Next slide here. So go ahead, next slide again. So after we click the data on the market information, we click the data on the demographics, economics, we estimate demand. What is the need, so to speak? And what you're going to find is a lot of need is driven off of replacement need or just lack of supply. Not necessarily true household growth, it's more of we're lacking consumer choice in the product type. So some of the numbers are really driven by that more so than true population growth. Go ahead, next slide. So this is tough to see. We're gonna dive into the next couple slides. Easy to read. Go ahead, next slide. So for overall across the county, we had about 1,400 units in demand. Now, will 1,400 units get built over the next decade? Very likely not. And a lot of that's driven by the senior housing. That would be very difficult to build that much, but the demand is there for 1,400 units just based on demographics and this lack of supply. So we're going to touch upon these issues now. Next slide, please. So look at general occupancy being non-senior. You'll see that the for sale market is leading the way and apartments follow. So for sale single family meaning just traditional single family houses, detached housing units, etc. Next slide. The senior housing is off the chart, and this is really driven again by demographics, as we showed earlier on. That means a huge growth in that demographic. But most of that demand that we found is actually for non-service based. So, you know, it could be a for sale product that just is like a slab on grade villa. It could be apartment. Could be affordable rental, real high affordable demand. So the demand we found with senior housing was more so for people who don't need services, but just alternative housing product type. So really strong demand there. Go ahead, next slide. And the next slide should be, I think, a recommendation. So here we go to single family. Ideally, we want to have like about a 5-year lot supply of vacant lots, and we do have a fair amount of vacant lots out there, but it may not be most desirable lots for buyers we want today. So it's still going to be a need for more lots. As we look at the demand, it's kind of at the bottom there. You see where demand kind of shakes out for some market, but you know the highest need is at 150,000 to probably a 250 price point, which would be a great price point to hit if you can build new construction for that. The challenging part is how you're going to build at that price point without some subsidy or incentive involved to help bring down those costs. That's where your sweet spot would be for new construction. Next slide is going to show the multifamily side. Again, we believe you can do this all day long. Anything that has one level living is going to be a strong demand. I mean, there's a lack of this product type across the county, and we think that this would be just a product that's desperately needed. You know, I think twin homes are a great product type that can be built, you know, rather risk-free because, you know, you've done 2 units at a time, a little higher density, and they're very, very well received in the marketplace, both by, you know, all demographics, like twin homes. The next size is going to be apartments. Again, we just really need some apartments in any shape or form, doesn't matter what they are, if it's traditional, multi-family style, you know, townhomes. The 2 top townhomes are Hutchinson, just down the road. The top one is a 12-unit building. They're quad, you know, buildings of 12, and the bottom one, I believe, is like a 20-unit building. The townhomes in general would be a really well received rental housing product type in the county. Go ahead, next slide. Again, senior housing, strong demand across the board, but the recommendations really are for the active product types, whether that be you know, rental, could be ownership type style, something that's maybe not service-based, but more independent, just targeting association maintained products types. Next slide. The key takeaways. Again, we've had some population declines. That's going to slow up in the short term. We have this aging of baby boom population that's going to really impact our product types. We certainly have a lot of 1-2 person households. Again, at smaller household sizes, so we don't need necessarily a 2,500 square foot house. You can get away with, you know, much smaller unit sizes and to meet that need. Again, we're really pleasantly surprised how well the unemployment rate was doing, despite what's going on with COVID-19. We do like the rental housing market because it's just a lack of product type in the county that rental is definitely needed. You know, your for sale market is peaking, certainly at the highest price points today, but there's lack of supply out there, and certainly a lack of association maintained product types. We do think there's a need for more vacant platted lots to meet the demand. But I think that the big challenge is how do we cash flow these new projects, and we're going to need some kind of gap financing for that. And finally, you know, COVID-19 really has not hit a lot of the housing markets as much as you think it, based on the media and whatnot, especially out of state Minnesota. I've been working on a ton of jobs across the state with developers, and things have been booming. I mean, wherever I go across the state right now, in rural communities and whatnot, you got construction going on, and they have not been affected nearly as much as the metro area has been. People have been kind of looking for alternatives to the metro as these stay-at-home mandates were in place and whatnot. So we'll touch on that in a second too. But we haven't really felt effects too much on the housing market thus far, at least when our interviews we conducted this. They alluded to that. So I'll go ahead, next slide. We'll talk about COVID real briefly. Look at the next slide quick. This big picture, I think the big picture is because of people are working from home so much, there is no longer this need to live close to your place of employment. So we certainly have seen demand in communities outside the core of the metro areas. People have been moving out, kind of urban to rural or urban to suburban. There's definitely been a lot of opportunities right now for affordable housing as people have desired to seek out other housing types. That's certainly going to be a big driver that we think can capitalize on is the affordable housing that you can offer that's not available closer in. Kind of, a couple slides here, we probably go through a couple of these quick. With the next slide, Stephanie, let's go to the next one. You know, the for sale housing market's been kind of off the chart with COVID. I mean, we're hitting all-time highs right now, which is crazy as far as sales pricing, new construction. It's been just really interesting to see how housing has really bounced back and almost at a V recovery, whereas the overall economy has not. You've certainly seen some very positive things in the for sale market. A lot of it's driven too by these historic low mortgage rates of under 3% have been driving a lot of the for sale market. So overall, the for sale market has fared very, very well beside COVID. Next slide. Should be the rental housing. And rental housing too has fared considerably well considering people lost their jobs. I mean, I think certainly the government aid kept a lot of people afloat and they would make the rent payments. However, we really need Congress to strike a deal to for more aid. Otherwise, we're going to have some rent payment issues down the road here real soon. So we really want that to happen because we think who's going to hit the most are going to be mom and pop operators, especially the single family rentals and whatnot, could get hit the hardest versus say your larger apartment buildings. So we really want something to get done there to help alleviate the pain there, because it's a lot to absorb if you're an individual property owner having to not get your mortgage payment for your rental unit. Go to the next slide here. You know, senior housing got hit the hardest during the pandemic. However, it has been bouncing back, but in the short term, it still has some bumps to come across. But I think a lot of people are figuring it out, getting people back in these buildings and whatnot. It's going to be fine long term, but it's certainly hit a hiccup once the whole COVID thing started. So long term, we like senior housing. Just right now, until we find a vaccine or whatnot, it's still kind of touch and go with some senior housing product types. Go to the next slide. Quick just comment is about internet access. You know, broadband access to internet is huge today. So especially as kids are doing school from home or distance learning, or people working from home, you really have to have high-speed internet and broadband. And it's been an issue in other counties we've worked in where certain cities have high speed and some don't, or your lake homes that don't have it or whatnot. So we really stress you have to have high-speed internet, and that's really going to help propensity of future housing developments having access to the high-speed internet. Next slide, please. So next steps, we'll talk about what happens next. So I think this is great. Jordan did a great job organizing this this discussion here about the overall housing study. That Jordan's to update the website and have the whole report, all 180 pages, whatever it was, online. So you'll have that. But really, I think each city needs to digest it. And decide, what are the various strategies and housing product types that, they want to pursue, and how you're going to implement these findings to make a development a reality. So we'll talk about that in a second. But really, we think it's going to come down to, finding ways to incentivize development or private-public partnerships to help alleviate some of that gap in the development cost gap versus what people are willing to pay. Next slide here. So priorities. I think certainly one of the top priorities has to be rental housing in general. There's just a lack of rental options across the county, and any production would be well received. So if it's a twin home or a fourplex or eightplex or whatever it is, rental housing has to be a top priority. Lot production as well. And again, lot production may have to be through, city or county getting involved as well to help promote infrastructure to help get new lots platted. So that relates to the third point about public-private partnerships. That's going to be probably the most critical piece here to help make anything come to fruition, is how do we get the private sector, public sector to come together to help stimulate construction of the housing market. So that's, one of the key takeaways when you have, pricing where we're at and development costs up here, we got to fill that gap. A lot of cities can issue RFPs out to developers for specific sites. We recommend each city rank all their sites. What sites do you think are appropriate for future housing development, and keep the ball, start chasing builders, developers to help find a way to make that project happen. And I think just too, I think the last point there, I think just promoting affordability, because schools across the county, open space, green space, and then working from home, I think is critical today, and that gives you potential to tap into other markets that may not have been there pre-COVID. So we think that's a positive, certainly for the county. Next slide, Stephanie. And just kind of back to the affordability, just looking at the cost of living versus the metro area, how substantially lower it is for various costs. I will say though that the child care cost is probably pretty low for both the Greater Minnesota and Twin Cities. I know very well what we picked for child care. It wasn't nearly that, but certainly lower cost of living across Greater Minnesota and quality of life. Sell the quality of life, affordability, schools, sense of community, sense of pride in the school district and the communities. Those are all things I think, that we can take advantage of as we look at housing opportunities across the county. Next slide, please. I think that might be it. That is it. All right. We covered a lot of ground. Again, this is a 180-page report, give or take. So a lot to digest, a lot of information. I'd like to, I guess, open it up for some Q&A and get some feedback. And again, Jordan will have it up on the website, and then it'll be accessible for everyone to download and review. So I'd like to open it up right now for some questions you have, if it's via the chat function or just I guess the old-fashioned way, just the go to meeting here. So I'll turn it back over and we'll look for some Q&A.
Any questions for Matt?
Hi, this is Rick and Olivia. I'm curious in your work, Matt. I didn't see it. Maybe I missed it. But what are returning families? What are they saying they want in the community? You mentioned what they want in features in the home. So from a broader perspective, what assets in the community are they talking about that they want?
Well, we don't necessarily get into that level of detail, Rick, but I tell you what they're probably looking at for. They're probably quality of life. Schools are probably number one. They're looking for quality of life. Schools, the community are probably the top three when people relocate. A lot of times it is they grew up in the area, they left to the metro area or wherever they left, they decide, hey, I'm gonna move back close to my family, my friends, my church, my community, and then move back to town. Now, the challenging part is you have to have the appropriate housing stock to attract, especially millennials today. I mean, one of the biggest challenges we have today is millennials go to college. They're living in a fancy apartment today, which you pay. I mean, the going rate for U of M today is $1,000 a month per kid for an apartment, which is crazy to think, isn't that? I mean, so, but they're living in these luxury units. They come back, they're like, oh boy, there's no housing product type that I'd even consider. So anything that's new, contemporary, is going to be a huge benefit to the community. I mean, the rental stock right now across the county, whether it's Olivia or wherever you look at it, is outdated. It lacks amenities. It lacks anything that, you know, most people today desire. That'd be number one. You know, washer dryer in the unit is probably the number one thing. But, you know, two would be, you know, attached parking is a huge asset as well. But you have to have those two things today, otherwise they won't even consider it a lot of times. But no, I mean, those are, you know, I think that's the product. You have to have housing available, and you know, whether it's an employer looking to hire a new staff person or whatnot, you have to have some options. But right now, it's just a lack of supplies, so to speak, across the board. Is that kind of what you're looking for, Rick, or what? Or were
Yeah,
you?
yeah, that's
Okay.
good. I do agree with you. I think our biggest asset is, our biggest opportunity is returning, you know, I call them homecomers, returning with young families, with kids, and because they are either coming back to be closer to home, grandma, grandpa's getting old, you know, or this is where they grew up. What about this whole eviction prohibition that's going on right now because of COVID? How is that impacting the market?
Oh, great point. I mean, there's a lot of things going on today because of COVID. Now, that eviction stuff, a lot of it has to do with the type of financing that the product has, you know, if it's a government-backed mortgage or whatnot. But I think we're gonna have some problems if they don't get things figured out real soon. Because so far, the rent payment numbers have come up pretty high. We're still averaging, depending on the type of property you look at, 90% plus of people are paying their rent. Hence, that landlord or property owner can pay their mortgage on their property. So far, there hasn't been a huge hiccup yet in regards to that. However, we are concerned that where that's going to go. I mean, if you know, the unemployment rate keeps going south, or you know, people don't start paying rent, someone has to pay for it. I mean, so that property owners on the hook then with their bank to pay that mortgage. So who's going to take the fall for this? So I think there's a lot that has to get figured out right now, and no one knows what's going to happen. But right now, it's still, everything's up in the air right now. It's a lot of unanswered questions, and we just don't know where it's going to fall. But so, I mean, thus far, we've been pleasantly surprised how well the market has held up, despite, you know, the broader unemployment rate across the state has the market has held out very favorably considering where we could be today.
You mentioned subsidies. You know, what are you saying as far as the types of creative financing, alternative financing that is being used in rural Minnesota? You know, we're in an opportunity zone here, and I'm just curious if your firm is kind of tracking what kind of traction there is with the various types of subsidies. What's being used right now?
Well, we touched on some of that in the report as far as, you know, housing programs and what you can pursue. Now, opportunity zones are interesting. I mean, believe me, we're all pro opportunity zone. I think the verdict is out on them, right? Not thus far. There hasn't been a whole lot completed across the state, or even across the country for that matter, in these opportunity zones. It has not stimulated housing as much as we thought it would. But at the same time, I think a lot of people are just feeling it out. I mean, it's a new program. You know, a bunch of accountants are trying to help developers on how to navigate the whole process, and take advantage of the program. I think it's such a new program that no one really knows how to really chase it yet. So it's kind of interesting in that regard that, you know, I think it's fantastic you're in opportunity zone. That gives you a huge leg up, but I think there's still a lot to learn on that. And people are still feeling out how that's going to shake out and how you can take advantage of that. So, and another thing is, there's some crazy opportunity zones out there, like Mall of America, for example, is an opportunity zone, which makes no sense to me, but you know, the governor chose which census tracts get that designation, so to speak. But subsidy, that's, you know, we can talk, there's a lot of different ways to go about that, gap financing, but I think, you know, our city's got for TIF, they got for free land, tax abatement, you know, if you go after tax credit projects, I mean, there's a lot of different avenues you can explore with this subsidy issue. And that's a, you know, a pretty big topic of discussion. But I think the reality is that based on where the rents are, if you talk rental housing, for example, there's a big gap to fill. And there has to be some give somewhere. Otherwise, you're never going to attract a, you know, a developer to pursue a project, given where costs are today. It's really tough. So a lot of cities are offering various incentives to help entice, sweeten the pot, so to speak, to make that project a reality.
Any other questions for Matt?
I did see one come on the chat.
Yeah, Matt, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, this is Ron Bailey from Olivia. Just wondering, you had mentioned that the rental housing needs need $1.19 PSF or $1,012 to break even. I'm curious what you would anticipate, you know, an investor who seriously is interested, what they would need for rent or that.
Well, exactly. Yep.
That first square number.
So typically,
developer?
so a developer is going to want, I mean, the rents of 61 cents per square foot are obviously not going to cut it for a developer. You know, they're going to need at least $1 a foot at a bare minimum. I'd say $1.10, $1.15 a foot is kind of what they're going to need to make a project financially viable. And that's assuming maybe, you know, no elevator, detached parking potentially, or townhome style. Townhome styles can be built a little more affordably. But yeah, I mean, the reality is you're in it for, you know, 130 grand a door probably on the low end for new construction for an apartment. So given that price point, you know, to make things cash flow, you have to have those rents, you know, that are going to be nearly double of the current housing stock. But again, the current housing stock is you know, 40 years old. It's a pretty outdated housing stock to compare it against. It's really not apples to apple comparing new construction against, you know, a 1975 building.
Do you think the median income numbers that you were presenting earlier would support those kind of rent levels?
Well, yeah, I think, you know, look at your median incomes. I mean, the rule of thumb is, you know, 3 times your income. You know, so I think, you know, based on those incomes, I think people can afford, you know, rents of $1,000 a month if it goes that high. And they will pay a premium for new construction, you know, for a nice product type, especially moving to town, you know, new to the community, and you know, just need a place to rent before they buy, because typically they take a job in town, they want to rent first, get to know the lay of the land, get to know the neighborhoods before they make that purchase, right? So they want to rent first, and you just got to have some options out there to meet those rental needs.
Yeah, and it seems like if you don't get that person, beginning their career right out of the chute with the rental income, the chances of selling that person a house are pretty remote, or a lot less anyway, as they go further down the pike. So, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, a question came up about the, let's read this question popped up about the school. One of the schools here, we ran across this through the project as well, that it could be potential to rehab a school and bring housing in. Yeah, I think we've certainly worked at other schools across the state, across the Midwest, that have been converted housing, and they have worked. Typically, they've gone for historic tax credits a lot of times, where they've been able to rehab a building, get a lot of rehab dollars from the state or feds, and they've been well received in nice projects. But they've been a huge, they've had a lot of financing to make those a viable rehab, because they're very, very expensive to rehab. You've got asbestos or whatnot, or other issues with, maybe depending on the age of the structure, is it 100 years old or whatever it is, it can be an expensive endeavor. But a lot of times they've gone with historic tax credits to make those projects, pencil out financially. But no, I think if you make it work, there'd be strong demand for it, no question about it. Just a matter of finding the right developer that can take on a project, because it's going to be a pretty sophisticated project to pull together. From a financing standpoint, it takes quite a few different pots, so to speak, to make that type of project work. I think they're great projects, but they can be challenging financially to pencil out without the right sources of funds.
Any other questions for Matt? And Matt, your contact info is in the housing study, so should somebody think of something tomorrow or next week or next month?
Yes, yeah, shoot me an email, I'll be happy to chat. Any questions you have, and like to see where this goes. And I know Jordan's got some big plans, so I look forward to seeing what comes to fruition here out in the housing study, and get some momentum going forward to make some more opportunities available for housing in your community. So look forward to seeing how things progress in the coming, days and years ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Jordan. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, shoot me email if you have any questions.
Awesome.
Great job, Matt.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
So coming up here now in just a moment, we're going to walk through some other programs that Renville County has available. Just last month, Renville County HRA EDA has created a new housing development gap loan program, which is available to basically help put together financing to stimulate multifamily housing projects. So Renville County EDA can lend up to $10,000 per unit of a multifamily, up to a maximum of $50,000 per development. The terms, we're lending that at prime interest, which is currently at 3 1/4, I believe. It's a 12-year loan, interest only for the first 2 years, while construction and stabilization lease up is underway. Then 10 years of monthly principal and interest payments, straight line amortization. For security, we take a second mortgage behind the lead lender and personal guarantees of the owners. And fees are actual expenses for any legal work being done. So that form will soon be online. If anybody's interested, just feel free to give me a call. Happy to discuss and how to figure out how to get the ball rolling on that one. So that, again, was just approved by our HRA EDA board about a month ago. So while on the note of some financing programs, Stephanie, if you want to pull up the PowerPoint, I'll touch base on a few other programs that are available. So the next slide, please. Again, we've got our multifamily development program that we just went through. Next slide. We have a rental rehab program. So should you be interested in rehabbing an existing property, we've got funds available to assist. with upgrading your existing multifamily rental properties. We can lend up to half of the project cost, up to $5,000 per unit or $20,000 per development. 0% interest, can't beat that with a stick. Loans are repaid over 5 years and secured by a second mortgage on the property. And the property must be current on their real estate taxes for that, but can help upgrade some multifamily properties. Next slide. We also have a down payment assistance. So if you are looking at doing some single family, we've got some incentives to help get new folks into your properties or to get those sold for you. So this is designed for first-time home buyers or somebody who's owned a home or has not owned a home, I should say, for the last 3 years. We can do up to $5,000 to help pay for the down payment and closing costs. You must live in the home after you purchase it. So if you are developing single-family homes, got a home buyer, this is a great fit. Again, maximum loan $5,000, 0% interest, and if must be current on real estate taxes for that. That information's on our website already, renville.com, or you can call our housing office, Pat and Raven, in our office there. And next slide, please. The housing rehab loan program. So if you have owner-occupied single-family housing, we've got funds available to assist with upgrades, things like a new roof, siding, HVAC, some windows, that kind of stuff. We can do up to half of a project, up to $5,000. There are some income guidelines. Again, $5,000, 5-year term, 0% interest on that, and you must be current on your real estate taxes. But for more info on that, that's at our website, renville.com. So. Also want to talk about some programs and other resources that are available to help with housing development, whether it's single family, multifamily, whatever it may be. Our HRA EDA just published a housing development assistance directory, which is on our website, renville.com, and we'll scroll down on that just a little bit. So some of the programs that are available, and it isn't a one-size-fits-all, so based on what your needs and what the situation is, we're happy to sit down with you, chat about these programs, and kind of figure out how to put a square peg in a round hole, get you connected to the resources that are most likely to be able to help. So the first thing is tax credits. You've heard of them before. I don't know how many folks are familiar with them, but in Minnesota, they're generally allocated through the state of Minnesota, through Minnesota Housing, that can help with the process. When tax credits are allocated, they're typically sold off on the market, and the income generated helps the developer get the process going. There are, with those tax credits, there are some requirements where a percentage of the housing, depending on what you sign up for, would be required to be eligible for folks to low to moderate income. So I'm happy to walk you through that process and check that out if that might be of interest to you. Also want to talk a little bit about historic tax credits. So if you've got a historic building that you'd like to upgrade, rehab, make into apartments or upgrade apartments, there are some tax credits available for that, and that is administered through the state of Minnesota as well. Those links have additional details on there. And then there's also something called new market tax credits. I believe all of Renville County is eligible for new market tax credits. If you have interest in those, please let us know. There are regional players that have allocations of those tax credits, and we're happy to get you in contact and get the ball started on that one. And as we scroll down, so there's some local programs, local revolving loan funds. Some cities may have small revolving loan funds that do gap financing to help. As we talked about just a few minutes ago, Renville County has a program that we can assist up to $10,000 up to $50,000 per complex. So we might be able to assist with that as well. Another thing I want to chat about is something called conduit or special purpose bonds. This is where a developer gets financing through their local unit of government, city, county, or township. Local units of government can issue bonds for special purposes such as this. And the first 10 million, I believe the number is, first 10 million of bonds per year are both bank qualified and tax exempt. Bank qualified means there's benefits for the bank in issuing the bonds. frankly, a lot of this is getting a bank loan and working with your city to have that promissory note stamped a bond. So the bond council will review and help put that together for you at the city level, but that can help free up some lower interest rates because the bank is getting both tax exempt status as well as bank qualified status. And I believe, and if anybody can correct me on this, I believe when you apply for conduit or special purpose bonds, if available, there's allocations of low-income housing tax credits that might be available to come with that as well. So if you have any interest in talking about that, again, feel free to give me a call on that. Like Matt mentioned, there's a few tax programs called tax increment financing, or TIF. That's typically done, initiated at the city level, but the city, the county, and the school district may agree to assist with that to help assist as you work through your development process. Related to that, there's also something called tax abatement. Again, very close to TIF, but that's where taxes are abated for a period of years up to a certain dollar figure as you build and develop property. Many local units of government have water and sewer services. Cities, if they own the water sewer utility, they have the availability to modify the terms of the water access or sewer access charge, commonly called WAC and SAC, either to reduce that rate or eliminate it or defer it for a period of time to help with the financing package and cash flows for your project. Building permit fees, same thing. Some local units of government might be agreeable to abating or reducing or deferring permit fees on that as well. Real estate available. I want to chat a little bit about that if there's any developers on the line. We keep a database of available properties, both on the market and off the market, publicly owned and privately owned, that are available for sale that would be ideal for housing development. If there are any developers interested, we would be more than happy to share that with you. And if you're so interested, we'd be happy to play tour guide. Take a look at those properties. You can hop in a vehicle with us. We'll go visit all 10 towns. Typically someone from the city is available to play tour guide, and as well as discuss specifics on the property and any types of incentives the cities might be available to provide. So know that some local units of government do own real estate available for future development. And then opportunity zones, as mentioned and talked about a little earlier in this event, there is an opportunity zone in Renville County, and quite a large one. It encompasses, I believe, the entire city of the city of Danube and Olivia, as well as some additional property. So I believe we have a map of that coming up later in this directory. But if you have any questions on that, don't hesitate to let us know. If you've got capital gains taxes that are potentially coming due, if you invest your capital gains within 6 months of when those were realized into a qualified opportunity zone fund that invests in a qualified opportunity zone, you can defer those capital gains as well as see a bit of a reduction in those. And then when the investment that you have is, or when you sell that, potentially those new capital gains could be eliminated as well. So we're happy to point you to folks who are experts in that opportunity zone program to point you to those type of situations. Yeah, that's kind of the newest, latest thing. And of course, we've got opportunity zone land available as well. So talking about a few other financing resources as we scroll down just a skosh. Minnesota Housing, based out of the Twin Cities through the state of Minnesota, they're the allocators of LIHTC, low-income housing tax credits. So there's their contact info. We've got connections in most all of these different resources, so we're more than happy to make a connection and introduction for you and help get that process and that conversation started. Midwest Minnesota Community Development Corporation up in Detroit Lakes, they have new market tax credits typically allocated to them. So if you're looking at doing some housing development, and I believe those tax credits could be eligible for anywhere here in Renville County. So we're happy to make those connections as well. If you're looking at the historic tax credits, the Minnesota State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, can help with some of that kind of stuff. HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Economic Development, their Twin Cities office is listed on there as well for different programs available to assist. And as we scroll down just a skosh, PACE program, Property Assessed Clean Energy. These are an assistance program for energy efficiency equipment and upgrades to property, solar panels, more efficient HVAC systems, insulation, windows, those type of things. What they do rather than do financing is they assess it to your property taxes. So when it comes to putting together a financing package, rather than having debt service on that, that might be a little more agreeable to your lender. So that's worth having a conversation if you're looking at doing something along those lines. Scrolling back up, also our office here at Renville County HRA EDA, we've got that low interest subordinated gap financing program, and any of these other programs, I am more than happy to chat with you and see what kind of resources we can bring to your project. Also, some technical resources. We want to thank our friends at the Southwest Initiative Foundation, as Jeanette Werdish mentioned earlier, big supporter of housing in Southwest Minnesota. I think Scott Marquardt's on the line somewhere as well. But we appreciate their grant that they provided. And Scott's a great resource for other programs and assistance with these for housing development. So if you haven't talked to Scott, I definitely encourage you to visit with him and see what kind of other programs they have. Also, the Greater Minnesota Housing Fund may be able to assist. Their website is on there as we scroll down just a little bit. Different resources would be definitely having interest in doing that. The Mid-Minnesota Regional Development Commission, I saw Eric and Les on the line from the Mid-Minnesota RDC. From time to time, they have connections to resources available as well. They're based out of Wilmer, cover the entirety of Renville County. And finally, equity investors. We try to keep a small database of potential equity investors. So should you be looking for partners to come in and put some equity into the project, we could certainly scratch our heads and see what we can do to connect folks for that. So as we scroll down just a little bit more, that is the opportunity zone. And there's a nice graphic there. Again, all of the city of Olivia, all of the city of Danube are covered in that opportunity zone. And that provides some tax benefits. Also, should you be looking for investors, opportunity zones, there are organizations that will help connect you to opportunity zone investors if you're interested in taking on partnership. That is for a long-term hold. So developing single-family homes to be sold off, not a great fit, but if you're going to do some multifamily, put up some apartment buildings, things like that, that might be a very nice resource to help you put together the financing package for that. And as we scroll down just a little bit more, all of our local units of government are listed. So we encourage you to talk to your cities. All 10 cities in Renville County are eager to chat with you and to see what they can do to assist, as well as we scroll down some of our elected officials here in Renville County as well, our county commissioners and our state representatives, and then on the and state senators. And then on the last page, we have, I believe, our congressional delegation out in DC representing the state of Minnesota and our congressional district. So that's kind of the long and short of that. I guess if I can leave you with one thought, please don't hesitate to pick up the phone and give us a call. We're happy to chat with you, connect you to the resources, and if we don't have an answer, we'll point you to somebody who should know the answer or know where to get the answer. So please don't be bashful about giving us a call. And again, for any developers on the telephone or on the line here today, we would be more than happy to visit with you. If you are looking for some properties, we're happy to show off what we have, make those connections for you, and let you take a look and assess what you have. Again, the housing study that was presented on today is now on our website, which is renville.com. All this information is also on our website, renville.com. And again, I can't say it enough. Feel free to give us a call. We're more than happy to chat with you, meet with you, whatever it takes, and make those connections and get that going. So there's the Reader's Digest condensed version. So I'll stand for any questions if anybody has any.
No, super job, Jordan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Any other questions?
Not at this.
Knowing everybody wants supper. I'm sorry. Did you have one, sir?
No, I know how to get a hold of you, so it'll be hopefully within a few weeks.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. So with that, I'll turn it back over to our HRA EDA Board Chair, the Honorable Jeanette Werdish.
Thank you. Well, what an interesting afternoon. Lots of information to digest there. So I want to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon for our housing study kickoff meeting. And thank you, Matt and Jordan, for all you did to make this presentation for today. And like Jordan said, just a reminder to go to our website, www.renville.com. You'll find all this information without repeating everything that he said. And to give the guys a call at the office, 523-3837, for anything you want to talk about or answer any questions. I'd like to thank the Southwest Initiative Foundation for their grant to help us with this project, and also to the cities for the contributions that they made to help this study be possible. So thanks again for attending, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Appreciate it for you attending.